Hey, hi, good morning, welcome. Yeah, let's turn the music down a little bit here and just get into it. So today, got a little bit of a full plate. Want to talk about policy and how it empowers your health and safety program and everything to do about it. Now, I will go forward as to say right now, having a little bit of stream issues, network issues, rebooted a few times. Network seems to be working, but there's some intermittent stuff. So hoping that everything works out, and I apologize in advance for any network issues. But before we get into it too far, let's just quickly just review the chat rules and what about the chat and so forth. First off, participate. You know what? Introduce yourselves. Your introductions are nice. They're appreciated. It's nice to know who's watching, where you're from, what you do, and how you're involved with health and safety. Even share your level of experience. It's appreciated, and I do appreciate it. Now, the other thing is, a lot of times there will be interaction within me and the viewers, and I've had people actually answer questions that have been asked or provide points, and I appreciate that as well. Your knowledge and opinions count, because the idea is we want to learn to collaborate and form a community here. So that whole process of going ahead, just jumping in, and if you want to answer a question or ask a question, by all means. But on that note, let's be civil. No name calling, no insults. We have varying levels of experience here. And so just on that note, let's just be nice to each other and be civil and understand that this is discussion. It's not considered professional advice. In fact, a lot of it is just my opinion, and what I've done and the things I've used is just to get to this point, to be able to provide a safety service to my employers. So I'm sharing from my experience, and I expect you to do the same thing. Yeah, now that's over with. Whew. Oh, that's a question. We'll talk about that a little later. But apparently, here's one. YouTube is telling me I'm streaming way too high. So at first, my network isn't working properly. And now, apparently, it's working too well. Go figure. I don't know. I really don't know about this. It wants me to turn down my streaming bitrate. So let's do that. Let's turn it down and see if that helps. Yeah, because they say it's just too high and I'm too fast. Go figure. Good morning, IWG. You're new to the safety area, and thanks for, okay, well, you're welcome very much. Thank you. Now, just a couple of things to share. I've had a lot of experience regarding reviewing health and safety policy and writing health and safety policy, and I've found varying levels of issues across the board as far as it goes. And in fact, I've made mistakes when I've been doing this. And so what I want to do is share some of the mistakes I've made, some of the things that I've seen, and some of the things that I've learned through all of this. So without further ado, let's just get into it. And I appreciate if you share anything that you've experienced and you've noted as far as policy goes. So yeah, let's look at policy and the good of it. Because I said, I titled this The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Now, realize one thing is that policy provides governance to your organization. It determines how you're going to govern. And in fact, I have a definition for policy for you. And what I'll do is I'll share that right now. And that might help to clear up things. So what policy is it's a course or principle of action adopted or proposed by a government, party, business, or individual. Now, if you want to think of it one way, basically policy what it does is it tells you, your organization, and you, because you're part of your organization, how you're going to carry out that course of action. In this case, it's health and safety. So back to our PowerPoint, or our presentation, shall we say. So exactly what it does is it provides that guiding corporate course of action. So it provides overarching how you as an organization, good morning, Bob Clark, how you as an organization are going to carry out health and safety, right from a part-time employee all the way up to the CEO, because everybody in the organization is the organization. And it provides you those guiding principles. Okay, and we'll talk, just hang on that. We'll talk a bit more about those guiding principles and what I mean by that in a bit. But basically, the policy should provide overarching guiding principles. And what can happen is there can be mistakes when you're considering those guiding principles. And I'll talk about mistakes in a bit. But it's the foundation for your organizational health and safety. In fact, realistically, what your health and safety policy has to do is guide your health and safety program. It's a guide to it. And I'll get more on how, what else it does for your health and safety program in a minute. But realistically, we have to understand that with health and safety policy not done right and not done properly, there's bad things, there's mistakes. And one of the biggest ones I see is too many policies. I've seen organizations where they have a health and safety policy, they have a health and safety program policy, they have an incident investigation policy, they have a hazard assessment policy, they have a worksite inspection policy. Oh, Bob, that's an excellent question. I'm going to circle back to it. Actually, in fact, I will talk about it in just a second, and right after this section, this slide, it might answer some of your questions. And in fact, it'll come in just a second, so just bear with me. But what happens is they have way too many policies, and a few of the things that can occur with way too many policies is you can have a cascading error effect. Let's say that you want to change your investigation policy for whatever reason, operational changes or whatever. But now what you've got to do is everything that investigation policy addresses or cascades from, or it gets derives from, such as your health and safety policy, maybe your hazard assessment policy, may be affected. So now what you have to do is have to look at all of them. So realistically, having one is the best case. Now, another thing is, and just as Bob's question got asked, is asking about if you don't follow your own internal policies, can you be considered no longer compliant? And in a lot of cases, depending on the wording of the policy, like once again, it becomes a legal challenge. But I've seen issues where an organization has had punitive action taken against them by the occupational jurisdictional authority. And in this case, it was WorkSafe BC in British Columbia, where they did not adhere to their own health and safety policy, and it was a policy beyond their health and safety policy. So, like, say, for instance, you have an inspection policy where you are saying you're going to be conducting inspections every 30 days. And it's policy. It's not part of the guiding process within your program, but it's your policy. So it's your governing process. So because you're governing your organization to conduct those workplace inspections, and let's say 2 months go by without inspections because of all sorts of things. We've just had a recent pandemic, and that could be one of them. All sorts of cases that could affect your inspection process. Now what's happened is you're not working within your own internal governance. So if something occurs because of that, you could be subject to punitive action. So that's why you want to make sure that you have your policies in such a way that they empower your health and safety program and guide it. So too many policies can hamstring you. I see it as a mistake. Some organizations do it, and you know what? It works for them. They have this process where they have the triggers built in, where if they're going to edit one policy, it automatically triggers the other ones. But once again, it's more work. Isn't it better just to edit one policy and then have everything through your guiding documents like your health and safety program or your health and safety management system as a whole? Bob, did that answer your question? Does that help? And go ahead, just zap it in the chat, let me know. Now, the other thing I see as a mistake is regurgitating legislation all over the place. Realistically, your policy should be how your organization is going to embrace and comply with that legislation and your guiding action as to what you're going to do. So if you take, and I've seen policies where they'll have 4 pages of cut and pasted legislation in there, and you know what? Nobody reads it. And immediately, if the workers are told to become familiar with your health and safety policy and it's 5 pages long, what do you think they're going to do? Literally, what do you think they're going to do? So avoid that. Avoid that notion of having cut and pasting your legislation in there, because realistically, that's what your policy is for. It's how you're going to comply with that legislation. The next thing is not getting any input. If you're building your policy by yourself, it's your policy. Okay, even though you're doing it for the organization, let's say that you're the health and safety professional or you're tasked with health and safety as part of your job, and you write that policy and you submit it to the CEO signs off on it, bam, it becomes a record. Then who helped with that? Who collaborated? Where was the consultation? The idea is it should always, all health and safety management systems should be bottom up and top down. Okay, that's the notion behind it. Bottom up, top down, so that it's everybody's within the organization. So get collaboration. And I've made video after video on it. I've harped about it. The importance of using your health and safety committee as part of that guiding force and that collaboration force behind it. So by all means, use them. Take it to your health and safety committee, because it should be made up as a joint committee of both workers and management representatives. And if you're doing that, then it becomes everybody's policy. And one of the best courses of action that I've ever seen is when the health and safety committee reviews it, you take it to the CEO and the CEO signs off, and it then becomes both the CEO's and the workers' policy. It becomes everybody's. So get that collaboration. I'm not saying pass it through every single worker for acceptance, but work with your health and safety committee to do it. And now the other thing is tossing a word salad. Okay, first off, I have yet to see it, and possibly there may be a jurisdiction that says you have to have exactly 150 words, or you cannot have less than 100 words in your policy, but I've never seen a minimum word count. In fact, the shorter that you can make it, the better. Brevity counts. Realistically, every worker in your organization should be able to speak to the intent and the spirit of your policy. But if you make it, like I said, 5 pages long, they're immediately going to look at it and go, I can't do this. I have to memorize this. I can't do this. And they're not going to want to do it. So don't toss a word salad. Now, on that note, one thing to remember when you're building policy, if you have to look it up on Google, don't use it. Okay? If you don't know what the word means, and the other thing, that's why it's important to collaborate with your health and safety committee, because if they don't know what the words mean, then they don't want to use it. Remember, words matter, but if we have to go to a dictionary for every second or third one in your policy, you know what? It's really not a very useful policy. Make it in plain language. I also want you to remember one thing, that I don't think there's any single workplace where English is a first language anymore. Maybe there is, but I have yet to see one. In a lot of cases, we have a very diverse culture and population. So the easier you make it to understand your policy, the better it is. Now, on the note of the ugly, one of the things that occurs is the wrong place and the wrong time. What I mean by that is having stuff that you've repeated in different areas. Like your health and safety policy says one thing, then you go and quote it in your health and safety program. It's quoted in job descriptions, and it's quoted in safe work practices. But then all of a sudden, let's say that we change how we're doing job descriptions, or we change the content of safe work practices or something to that, or safe work procedures and documentation. We do something like that, and then all of a sudden, once again, it triggers that same cascading error. Say it in one place and complement it elsewhere. Complement, supplement it elsewhere. You have an overarching health and safety policy, refer back to that and complement it in your other documentation where you need to. That just makes perfect sense. Now, as I said on that note, doubling and tripling it up. If you're copying and pasting your health and safety policy all over the place versus just having it in one place, your health and safety policy wording, then what happens is when during duplication or whatever, and I've seen it before, somebody takes it upon themselves to go, excuse me, takes it upon themselves to edit it. And all of a sudden, you have 4 or 5 different copies and in different forms. And not only is it confusing, but it causes error, and it really doesn't speak well to the continuity of your whole entire process. You want to maintain integrity, say it in one place, complement it elsewhere, don't double and triple it up, and make sure that when there's changes made, that there's a change management process for it. The other thing I see is granularity where it's not needed, and that once again it causes increase in size, where you have you spell every single thing out right down to its finite detail. And does that need to be done? Or can you have overarching statements within your health and safety policy and then get granular with them in your health and safety management system as far as your health and safety program and the associated safe work documents go? That is the better process, because the other thing when you're doing that is you're driving people to your program and the safe work procedures, and that's what you need. You need to make sure the workers have that familiarity with that. The other thing is roles and responsibilities everywhere. Realistically, your health and safety policy should have just overarching roles and responsibilities. Something to the tune of, it's the expectation of this company that all workers or all those associated with the company and the company's function are going to adhere to the policy. Something to that effect. I will talk more about roles and responsibilities in an upcoming video because I have some suggestions. And so what I do is, if you haven't subscribed yet, by all means subscribe, and you'll get notified when that video comes up, because I have some suggestions regarding roles and responsibilities. Because once again, I see it as one of those mistakes where we put it here, and then it's here, and then it's down here and over here. And you know what? Then there's mistakes and there's no integrity. So I have some advice for you, and it's coming up in another video. Now, my advice to you, keep it simple, okay? Use the KISS principle. Keep it simple, and you know what the other S stands for. Okay? Have words like your commitment to safety. Have outline. All policies should have a few parts. Okay? And the very first thing should be that commitment to safety. And however you're going to word it is up to you. But you should have a commitment to safety. In fact, a lot of times, if you know about how policy is constructed and you're being quizzed on it, you can use these components and you can say, well, I'm pretty sure it contains this, or I'm pretty sure it contains this, and I'm pretty sure it contains that. And generally, you'll pass. Also, who does it cover? And thinking about organization, or depending on what your organization is made up of. Let's say your organization has full-time and part-time workers, but you have casual workers, you have volunteers, you have contractors, service providers, vendors, and other visiting dignitaries and so forth to your organization. Then you might want to talk about it as a community versus just your organization. I'll leave that up to you, but it's what is your commitment to safety and who does this commitment cover and address? The next thing is, what are the overarching expectations, both of the community and the organization as a whole? And of course, one of those overarching expectations is the commitment to safety. How are you going to carry that out? So what are your overarching actions? What are you going to do as an organization to carry these things out and do this process. And so understanding that the way you do it is create your policy, but use some key wording, okay? You want to look at things like managing risk, protecting, looking after, embracing, vigilance, things like that. Words that say that you're going to do this and how the process is going to work out. You also want to be addressing the health and safety, the well-being, and depending on the jurisdiction you're in. Some jurisdictions have a requirement, and it's becoming more the norm these days, of not only physical health and safety, but mental or psychological health and safety, psychosocial or social well-being, and the overall well-being and health of the workers. So match your jurisdictional requirements with the wording of your policy. In fact, when it's done, what you should be doing is looking at the points in your legislation and circling where they're addressed in your policy. And if you meet all of those points of the legislation, you're done. Okay? Also, who are you going to address? The workers, the everyone, the organization, the community. Use those words that are going to embrace so that it doesn't matter who it is, even if it's a visitor to your organization. And especially with a lot of different public organizations, like say going away from the construction companies and the oil and gas to things like post-secondary institutions or retail outlets or what have you, with the effects that the pandemic has brought us, what happens is we have to look at visitors and what's the requirement of them. Some of the organizations will just have signage outside on their door, and that's going to be the process. Others may require visitors to their organization to be familiar with the policy and their overarching instructions. So once again, examine your situation and make sure that you meet the requirements. The other thing is you have to have something in there that you're going to reduce or eliminate or reduce hazards. The idea is your goal should always be elimination, but you're going to reduce it through control wherever possible. And that's your whole responsibility as an organization. That's what you want to look to. Now, the other thing is all health and safety programs or health and safety management systems should be governed by the notion of continuous improvement and best practices. So your policy doesn't necessarily have to have both words or both phrases in there, but you should be speaking to something about continuous improvement in there somewhere, somehow. Now, a few other important considerations to note too, and don't worry, I have examples of policy, I do, is violence and harassment. A lot of times now legislation requires that your policy either address violence and harassment or point to a management system that addresses violence and harassment. In fact, some jurisdictions require that you have to have separate violence and harassment policies. So be aware of what your jurisdiction requires. Like I said, I was saying that you shouldn't have more than one policy, health and safety policy, but if it's a jurisdictional requirement to comply with the legislation, to have policy, that's fine. But a lot of cases, most jurisdictions or many jurisdictions just require you to address health and safety, and then that those considerations for violence and harassment be addressed somewhere within your health and safety management system. If you want to know more about that process, by all means, leave me something in the chat or the comments, and I'll look to addressing it in upcoming videos or live streams. Now, the next thing is a lot of jurisdictions also require some sort of wording that addresses psychological or mental health. They're becoming more and more the norm. In fact, first it was safety, then it was health and safety. And depending in the United States, they look at safety and health. It doesn't really matter as long as you're looking at both. But with health and safety, there's been a recognition that psychological and mental health, or psychosocial and mental health, depending on your wording and your jurisdiction, actually go together to determine the overall health of a person. I was talking with someone last night regarding sleep and how important it is. So some organizations have gone to the point of implementing fatigue management as part of their safety program, not just because they're piloting planes or driving transport machinery or whatever the case may be, is that they've also recognized that need for that restorative sleep. So once again, look at your jurisdiction, look at your industry and the requirements of your industry sector and the compliance with the legislation, design your policy that way. Now, so as I said, what I've got is just a good example of health and safety policy that I've written. I wrote it for another video that I did on policy a little over a year ago. But what I've done is I've just had a look at current practices and processes and reworded it, because that's what you should be doing. That's a best practice that embraces continuous improvement. And so this wording that I've used is, and I've used provoking safety. If you want the wording for this and you want to be able to copy it for yourself, by all means, let me know in the chat or the comments, and I'll put it in the video in the live stream description. Okay, by all means. But provoking safety is committed to protecting the health and safety of our workplace community and the environment by identifying hazards affecting the physical, psychological, and social well-being of everyone involved in our operations. Provoking safety is committed to reducing the risk these hazards pose in all aspects of our working operations, with the end goal being eliminating of these risks wherever possible. This moral and legal obligation is fulfilled by implementing a health, safety, and environmental management system in compliance with legislation and embracing the goal of continuous improvement. It is expected that everyone involved within our organization understand and live out the policy while participating in our workplace activities. Now, I understand it's a mouthful, but if you look, it's not even like it's less than a third of a page. Now, depending on your organization, depending on your dynamics, you might want to add policy statements that accompany that policy and just edit it according to the verbiage to just suit your needs. So it's okay to have policy and then policy statements. I always try to recommend keep everything down to one page wherever possible, and then complement and supplement your policy within your health and safety management system documents. So here's an example of, once again, the policy statement. And to satisfy the requirements of this policy, Provoking Safety is committed to implementing a health, safety, and environmental system in compliance with the legislation and embracing the goal of continuous improvement. Establishing a joint health and safety committee to serve as stewards of the health and safety management system. Promoting health and safety, including physical, mental health, and social well-being within every aspect of the organization. Recognizing that health and safety is a requirement from planning to completion of all organization functions, and ensuring the longevity and sustainability of the health and safety management system through the allocating of reasonable funds from the organizational operational budget. So, like I said, if you want that wording and you want to copy and paste and then substitute, by all means, because I would rather that anybody that's attached with the channel, the subscribers, or anybody that's working in health and safety be empowered to make a better and safer health organization through health and safety. So it's not up to me to sell stuff or anything else like that. I just want to see people be successful in the roles that they're playing in health and safety in their organizations. So realistically, when it gets right down to it, health and safety needs to guide your health and safety program. It needs to empower it. It needs to drive it. It needs to be that thing, that foundation that your health and safety program is built on. So it's important. Have good wording with your health and safety policy. Words matter. Try to keep it as short as possible. Don't build word salad, and don't regurgitate legislation, and don't have it repeated throughout different things. Don't necessarily get trapped in granularity, and don't, how should we say, lose the forest for the trees. And once again, always, if there's anybody has any questions, by all means, post them in the chat, leave it in comments. I appreciate every comment, everything that, all of the interaction that's provided to me. I appreciate it all, and I do my best to try and answer questions wherever possible. And on that note, I did have a couple of questions come up this week, and one of them right through the channel, and then the other one that was asked to me anecdotally. So what I'm going to do is I'll just answer the first question. And it was brought up by Jim Stepik. And it was in a previous video I did regarding reporting, recording of incidents and the statistics. And he said, thank you for the information. Just to confirm, there appears there's no insignificant incidents when workflow is reduced or interrupted, correct? Is there a litmus test to discern if the incident is reportable? Oh boy, good question, and possibly even it's going to take a bit of a longer answer. And so maybe what I am going to do is likely follow up with another video. But if you end up with a hangnail as a result of grabbing a piece of paper, do you report that? Well, no. The whole notion is, if there's been an incident that causes injury to your person or body, regardless of the magnitude, if there's been a close call or near miss where there could have been harm to you or property, or an incident has caused harm or damage to property, then it should be reported at the organizational level and recorded at the organizational level for the purpose of compiling statistics so that you can prevent those similar things from occurring, so that you don't have something that could be worse the next time. Now, excuse me, need a drink of coffee. So on that note, I hope that covers it up, is that if there was something that causes damage to person or property, or damage to property or assets, injury to a person, or there was nothing happened, there was a close call, but the potential was there for injury to a person or damage to property and assets where work was interrupted, then you know what? You're going to have to record it and report it at the organizational level so the statistics can be recorded. However, one important thing to note, some jurisdictions, such as, for instance, OSHA, as excuse me, another person reminded me, is that certain things below first aid, where the worker returns to work, doesn't need to be reported at the OSHA level. However, and Bob, if you're still there, I think you can weigh in on this, but it still needs to be recorded at the organizational level. Now, I could be wrong. I would have to look it up, but if I remember from memory, that's what I recall. In Canada, in most jurisdictions, regardless if there's been an interruption at the work level, then you're going to have to record it and report it at the organizational level. And depending on what your jurisdiction says, say, for instance, in Alberta, if there's been a serious incident that's resulted in the death of a worker, or the worker has been hospitalized, or you know they're going to be hospitalized, bridge, crane, or derrick collapse, or there's been a cave-in, or there's been a significant part of a building structure collapse, then it has to be reported to the Occupational Health and Safety of Alberta as soon as possible. If there's been injury or an incident that's recurred that's required corrective actions, or you believe correction actions have had to occur, whether it's a near miss or any interruption, then it's going to have to be reported after the incident has been investigated and corrective actions have been done. So in a lot of cases, say, for instance, paper cut, you've gone and got first aid, Band-Aid, returned back to work. Does that have to be reported to the government? Absolutely not. Should it be recorded at the organizational level? As long as there's first aid records kept, yes, it's a good notion, because we may have trends and statistics that we have to look at as a result. Let's say that so many workers have been cutting themselves on the edge of the photocopier, and you decide to look at the trends, and so then you say, well, you know what, we're going to have to call. We've had 10 injuries although minor, in the last 2 months, we should be calling the photocopier company and get them to come in and service and fix that thing so it isn't a problem. So, recordable incidents, I hope I answered that question. It's a bit long, but that's also one place where your health and safety program, not your policy addresses it, but your health and safety program needs to address it so that every worker has those instructions. Because realistically, what health and safety is the identification and assessment of hazards for probability, risk, and consequence, and then applying controls so that work can continue safely. That's what health and safety is. And what a health and safety program is that instruction, that set of documents that provides instruction to influence worker behavior to work safely. A health and safety management system is the organizational process where health and safety and those other concerns are addressed. Oh, hi, Bob. In Ontario, I'm sorry, Bob, if the injury does not involve lost time and does not require reporting above the company level. Okay, yeah, and that makes perfect sense. Good clarification and qualification. Thank you for that. Very similar to Alberta. Now, where was I? So your health and safety management system is how the organization works with that policy, program, and to carry out health and safety. So it's what the HR system does. It's what the operational system does. It's what health and safety does. It's what the administration does, and it's what the executive does. All of that working together in how they address that health and safety program to comply with the policy, which complies with the legislation. So it's a cascading or tree effect, if you will. I hope that makes sense. Now, the other question that I got asked, and it takes, I didn't write it down, it was anecdotal, and I don't want to name the person or anything, but it's what kind of training should health and safety committees take? And it's a good question. Some jurisdictions have a prescription process for the training for health and safety committees. Like, say, for instance, in Alberta, there's a requirement that health and safety committees have to be trained number one, on the 3 rights of workers. Number 2 is the obligations of worksite parties, mainly the obligations of the employer, the supervisor, workers, and that there's multiple obligations. And finally, their roles and responsibilities according to the legislation. They have those 3 components. How they're addressed is a performance-based legislation. In other words, leaving it up to the organization to fulfill as long as they meet those. Some industry sector authorities or industry sector partners have created health and safety committee training programs. And so that's a good thing. Beyond that, realistically, if you're a member of a health and safety committee, understanding hazard assessment, hazard identification, assessment, and control is really good. If you're involved in incident investigation, understanding the process, and I've created a playlist. And if you want to be able to see it, I'll leave a link in the description. If not, subscribe and have a look at the videos. And there's a playlist for incident investigation, theory and practice, but understanding how that's done. And then, of course, worksite inspections, because that's that proactive hazard assessment process. Hazard identification, assessment, and control, worksite inspections all look at the proactive process in identifying hazards and dealing with them. Incident investigation reacts to hazards manifesting, but circles back to the hazard identification assessment process and worksite inspections by implementing corrective actions. And then they're monitored through that if the idea of continuous improvement works and is being done in your organization. So as far as training goes, and then if you want to expand and go beyond that, by all means, I'd always encourage people, if health and safety is of an interest to them, by all means, take more and do more. I made a video recently regarding, and it was called Are You Ready for Safety? And I did a live stream about it a couple of weeks ago as well. And a lot of times you have these built-in idiosyncrasies and personality traits that make you a good candidate for being health and safety or a health and safety professional. So have a look at those videos. And if you think that you might fit into that and are ready for a career change, by all means, head down that road. I'm not saying it's easy to get where I am. It certainly hasn't been easy. I've made a lot of mistakes. And in fact, a lot of my videos, I share a lot of the mistakes I've made. But yeah, there we go. So that was the answer to that question, additional training for health and safety committees. Now, I haven't seen any other questions other than, if the employer does not enforce the policies, does that mean they are no longer compliant under health and safety legislation? And I hope I answered that, Bob, because I've seen that that's the case, especially if the policy has their commitment to the protection of safety of workers. And if they're not following that policy, then yes, they're liable for enforcement. If there's no other questions and nobody has any thoughts, I'll delay the closing, because a lot of times what happens is there's a delay in the chat, and sometimes the questions don't come through right away. So I'll just chat a bit more. I have just talk about some things that are upcoming. As I said, I have a video coming up next week that I'm going to shoot. It's about the different how to deal with the roles and responsibilities of everybody from the C-suite workers down to contractors in the organization, and where they belong, in my humble opinion. I want to, and one of the things I'm working on is a live stream series around incident investigation. So stay tuned for that. And what it is going to embrace is some of the other inquiries I've had regarding other root cause methodology, which is, of course, failure effects mode analysis, or failure mode effects analysis, whichever way you want to look at it, and fault tree analysis, and both of them used in root cause analysis. So some things I'm working on off the side of my desk, because I have a full-time job. I have some other external commitments and volunteering and a few other things. And of course, I am involved with a very lovely woman that also deserves my attention. In fact, more than those other ones do. So there's that. So I do a lot of this. This is a hobby. This is a pleasure of mine. This is an ability for me to use one of my passions, and that is health and safety and risk management. So that's what this is. This is not a hope to make money or get rich or anything else, because heaven knows I'm not going to get rich. Yeah. So anyway, there's no other questions or thoughts or anything else like that. So yeah, on that note, yeah. I want you to do me a favor, all of you. Oh, do you have any recommendations? Sorry, I'm going to turn the music back down. Bob, do you have any recommendations as to how to convince companies health and safety is an investment, not a cost in doing business? Excellent question, Bob. And it's one that I have been fighting with and challenged through my whole entire career. Absolutely. In fact, realistically, when it comes right down to it, when economic crunches come, health and safety is the first to get tossed out. And what they do is companies go and they salt all of the health and safety duties amongst different groups. The Health and Safety Committee does a bunch without any guidance from a health and safety professional. HR does some, operations does some, and what happens is your program goes downhill. And then when things get better, they hire new health and safety personnel, and their whole process is to get it resurrected and back up to what it was. And then the same vicious cycle occurs. So what I've done in the past, a couple of things, is number one, I have showed the return on investment through the prevention of injuries and the reduction of workers' compensation insurance premiums as a money-saving process. I've also shown that health and safety boosts what is called a health and safety culture, which has that notion of wanting to do safety, improves at safety, and be better, and therefore reducing injuries, reducing premiums. But also I've shown that in having that attitude and mindset creates a process where people are more vigilant of their surroundings, how they're doing their jobs, the equipment they're working with, and the assets and buildings that they're working around. So having a good health and safety program has also been demonstrated to reduce damage to property and equipment, and also helps with things like inventory control. And you've given me a good idea on a video or a video process or another live stream. So maybe I might put that in the queue as well. But that's what I've done. And it actually requires facts and figures that you're going to have to get. And if you can go back historically through the organization, because that's what I've done with some organizations, I've gone back historically and shown how costs were way up here. But when there's been implementation of health and safety done properly, they've gone down, but then not paying attention to health and safety has caused them to rise again. So, because it gives it a personal note, it speaks to the bean counters. Because realistically, when it gets right down to it, executives are put in place because their board has decided or identified that they're going to be able to drive the value of the company upwards. But what you have to do is show that that personal value, the human resource value, is also what drives that value of the company upwards. And health and safety is an integral part of that. And so I'm sorry, but it has to come down to numbers. It shouldn't, but it does. Like recently, it was funny. I was told by a recruiter, your resume and CV is too long. You need to get it down to just a few bullet points, 1 pager if possible, if not 3 pages. And I did. I submitted it to them and they can have a look at it and do whatever they want. I've got a job. I'm not too worried. I'll leave that where the good Lord takes it. That's fine. But to me, what it spoke to me is when I was hiring health and safety professionals, I wanted to know what their skill set was, what their history, what they were capable of. And then I took and I had granular questions that I would ask in the interview. Because I wanted to know. I was very conscious of what I needed for the organization. And so making sure that there was all of that in there. So realistically, I think it's also come down to recruiting, and companies are looking at human assets versus human resources. But once again, my opinion, maybe I'm jaded, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. Hey, Bob, glad I answered your question. And by all means, feel free to keep the questions coming. I really enjoy the questions. In fact, throw them into the comments. I appreciate comments. I appreciate everything that people leave me. I really do. So I think that brings it to a closing. Once again, thank you for joining me. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate all of the comments, all of the interaction in the chat. And like I said, I really enjoy doing this. It's an excellent hobby. But do me a favor. Until we see each other again, be a safety influencer, be a leader, provoke safety. Don't just think about it. Don't just talk about it. But live out what you're thinking and talking about by doing it. Provoke safety wherever you are. Okay? Take care. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend, and I look forward to seeing you again. Bye for now.